Spencer, the man behind the online lawn care persona SB Mowing, launched a fundraiser a couple of months ago for a woman named Beth. What began as a routine yard cleanup ended up pulling in close to $1 million in donations and turned Spencer's small mowing channel into a story people across the internet couldn't stop talking about. Long before any of that happened, SB Mowing was nothing more than a neighborhood lawn cutting operation in Wichita, Kansas. It started with a kid, a battered mower, and a stubborn need to be useful. Over time, those humble jobs turned into videos, and the videos found an audience far beyond the neighborhood, eventually reaching millions of viewers who tuned in to watch overgrown, neglected yards get transformed into clean, manageable spaces. Then came the video that changed everything, a single yard cleanup that triggered roughly $893,000 in donations. The scale of it stunned people, and almost immediately, the question started. Was the encounter staged? Was the emotional framing designed purely to drive clicks and donations? What was actually going on behind the camera? The story begins in southwest Arkansas, with an ordinary-looking, overgrown property. Weeds towered above waist height. Vines had wrapped around the fencing, and the grass had grown so wild that it swallowed up the walking paths. It looked like the kind of job most people would take one glance at and walk away from. For Spencer, though, it wasn't really about the grass. It was about what clearing that grass would mean for the person living there. He got to work clearing the property piece by piece, and little by little the yard reappeared. Fences became visible again, pathways opened up, and the lawn slowly returned to something resembling normal. Behind all of that effort was a woman facing real hardship, someone dealing with mobility limitations who could no longer physically manage her own yard, and who had even been fined by the city over its condition. When Spencer posted footage of the cleanup, the reaction was immediate. People from all over started watching, and what followed wasn't just admiration, it was money. Small donations came in first, then bigger ones, and the total kept climbing until it blew past anyone's expectations, eventually surpassing $893,000. Those funds went toward repairs, accessibility upgrades, and improved security for the woman's home. A simple act of yard work had turned into something much bigger than anyone anticipated, practically a viral movement, and with that kind of attention came scrutiny. People wanted to know if it was genuine, whether it had been engineered for views or sponsorship money, and how one person's effort could spark that level of generosity from total strangers. Once the number attached to the story became public, skepticism followed just as fast as the praise. Commenters and online forums began picking apart the footage, wondering if the meetings with homeowners were arranged in advance for maximum emotional effect, or if editing choices were used to amplify tears and reactions for engagement. Reactions split into two camps. Some people were moved and wanted to celebrate the generosity on display. Others pushed back, questioning whether the whole thing was authentic, and some even raised concerns about mowing someone's property without clear, formal permission, arguing that even a well-meaning gesture could cross a line. There was also broader criticism aimed at the platforms themselves. The idea that emotionally charged content thrives on ad revenue and sponsorships, which made some viewers wonder how much of the story was organic generosity versus content optimized to perform well in an algorithm. Despite all of that back and forth, one thing remained undeniable. An enormous number of people watched, shared, and ultimately donated real money, and that money had a tangible effect on someone's actual life. The tension between people wanting to believe in the story and people demanding proof became its own kind of subplot, a reflection of how hard it's become to trust anything that blows up online, even when the underlying story turns out to be true. The situation that sparked all of this involved an 85-year-old woman, referred in the story as Beth, whose yard had become completely unmanageable. Weeds had climbed above the fence line, walkways were buried under overgrowth, and because of physical limitations, she had no way to fix it herself. To make matters worse, the city had fined her for the state of the property. Spencer approached the job the way he approached every yard, methodically, clearing weeds and vines section by section until the space looked cared for again. But the goal wasn't just visual. It was about restoring some independence and dignity to someone who'd been quietly struggling. After the video went up, the response was overwhelming. People weren't just reacting to good before and after shot. They were reacting to the story behind it. Donations rolled in steadily until the total landed around $893,000, an amount far beyond what anyone expected from a single yard cleanup video. The money translated into real changes for Beth: driveway repairs, a wheelchair-accessible ramp, and general safety improvements that let her continue living independently. Beyond her situation specifically, the video seemed to spark something larger. People in other communities picking up their own tools to help neighbors in need, inspired by watching one person's effort snowball into something meaningful. To understand how SB Mowing got to that point, it helps to go back to the very beginning. Long before cameras or viral fundraisers, Spencer was just 11 years old, growing up in Wichita, Kansas, when he started going door to door offering to mow lawns with a noisy, second-hand mower that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. He wasn't chasing fame or a big payout. He wanted to be useful and earn a little spending money along the way. The work wasn't glamorous: brutal Kansas summers, sudden rainstorms, thorny yards, and stubborn weeds, but he kept showing up. Over time, neighbors started to trust him with their lawns without a second thought. What began as a kid with a broken-down mower slowly built into a reputation: reliable, consistent, someone people could count on. By high school, the side hustle had grown into something more serious. Spencer saved up for a used zero-turn mower and an old trailer, learned to drive a stick shift so he could get himself from job to job, and kept expanding his client list. Along the way, the work taught him lessons that had nothing to do with grass: responsibility, discipline, persistence. Those years quietly built the foundation for everything that came after. After high school, Spencer's path took an unexpected turn. He studied computer science at Kansas State University, took on responsibilities as a resident assistant in the dorms, and even joined an a cappella group to balance out the stress of long nights and lab work. Even with a full academic schedule, he kept returning to his old mowing clients every summer, drawn back by the satisfaction of finishing a job and immediately seeing the results, something office work and coursework rarely offered. In 2021, he graduated and landed a stable remote software job based out of Chicago. It checked the boxes for security and routine, but something about it felt hollow compared to tangible, physical work he'd grown up doing. Around that time, he started noticing videos online of people restoring overgrown yards. Simple, raw footage that was somehow pulling in millions of views. That was the moment something clicked. Spencer realized he could combine his years of hands-on experience with this growing online format, not just for views, but as a way to actually help people and maybe make a real difference at scale. That realization became the starting point for what eventually turned into SB Mowing's biggest moment: the video and fundraiser tied to Beth's yard. Given how much money was involved, it's not surprising that people questioned whether the whole thing was staged. Commenters speculated that homeowner encounters were choreographed, or that footage was edited specifically to maximize emotional reactions and drive donations. But in Beth's case, outside reporting backed up the story. Outlets including People and the New York Post looked into the situation and confirmed the details were legitimate. City officials involved in the original find also verified that Beth's